Good morning, learners at home. I welcome you once again to our virtual classroom on computer studies. In continuation of our scheme of work, we will be looking at another subtopic under database. And this week, we'll be looking at data types and forms of database. Data types and forms of database. If you will recall, last week we started discussion on database. We were able to state the definition of database, and we equally state terms that are associated with database. So we want to continue from where we stop, and we'll be looking at data types and forms of database. So at the end of the lesson this week, learners must be able to explain and state data type. Learners must be able to state and explain forms of database. So, data types or types of data. Data type is a classification of data which tells the compiler or interpreter how the programmer intends to use the data. The programmer is the computer user. The compiler or the interpreter is the translator that translates the human language or the high-level language to the machine language. So data type is a classification of data which tells the compiler or interpreter how the programmer intends to use the data. And then we have 5 types of data. We have the numeric data that contains only number or digits, like the age of a student, the scores, the weight, the distance. Then we also have the alphabetic data that contains only letter, like name, sex, nationality, etc. Then we have the alphanumeric data that contains numbers and letter, for example, the address of a student. Then we have the logical data that can only contain 2 possible responses, for example, true or false, yes or no, on and off. And we equally have the date data type that contains only the date. So we have 5 data types: the numeric data, the alphabetic data, the alphanumeric data, the logical data, and then the date data type. Then examples of data in different environments. Examples of data in different environments. In school, we have data such as the student attendance register, we have the staff attendance register, we have the pay slips, we have the report cards, the marks book, etc. Then we also have data items like name, date of birth, age, sex, state of origin, genotype, blood group, school intended. Then in hospital, we also have files such as the patient's record, the drug record, staff record. Then we have the data items such as names, date of birth, sex, state of origin, genotype, blood group, allergy, date manufacture, expiry date, brand name, etc. So all these that I have mentioned, they are data that we can organize in a database. So let's look at the forms of database, that is different types of database that we have. Now for the purpose of this class, we will limit ourselves to these 5 forms of database. 5 forms of database. We have the relational database, we have the hierarchical database, we have the flat file database, we have the object-oriented database, and then we have the network database. So these are the 5 forms of database that we have. So let's pick them one after the other. Relational database. A relational database is one that presents information in tables with rows and columns. A relational database is the one that presents information in tables with rows and columns. Records are arranged in rows, while fields are arranged in columns. Relational database is the most common type of database structure. So when we're talking about relational database, we're talking about the type of database that presents information in forms of rows and columns. Records are arranged in rows, while fields are arranged in columns. So what are records? We've stated it in our previous lesson that records, they are a collection of field, and then field, they are a single piece of information about an entity or an object. Examples of field includes name, age, sex, and so on and so forth. So we could see a typical example of a relational database where we have the field in the column and then we have record in the row. Fields such as name, SSN, phone number, address, office number, age, GPA. These are field. And then we have the record, that is Benjamin Bayer is a record, Shangun Shakim is a record, Dick Davidson is a record, and so on. So in a nutshell, relational database is a database that arrange information in form of rows and column. Then we have the hierarchical database. Hierarchical database. So this is a form of database that arrange information in form of a tree. It arrange information in form of a tree. It can also be defined as a design that uses a one-to-one or a one-to-many relationship for data element. The data is stored as record and are connected to one another through link. So we could see a typical example of an hierarchical database model where we have school, we have students, we have teacher, then all of them, they are linked together in form of a tree. So we move on quickly to flat file database. So this type of database consists of table that is not complex to understand. This type of database can only handle a single table database. So we have another forms of database that is not all that complex, and that is flat file. And this can only handle a single table database. So we could see example of a flat file database where we have fruits as the parent, and then we have list of fruits under, then we have the vegetable also, and we equally have list of vegetables under. So these are example of a flat file database. Then we'll move on quickly to network model database. So this type of database allows the modeling of many-to-many relationship of data. In the network model of a database, it is possible for a record to have multiple parents, making the system more flexible compared to the strict single parent of the hierarchical database. So you could see that network model allows the modeling of many-to-many relationship of data. That is, it allows for a record to have multiple parents. As we can see, a typical example of a network database model where we have store, we have the client being linked to the store, supervisor linked to the store, worker linked to the store, items, orders, everything still linked to one another. Then we have the last but not the least, the object-oriented database. Object-oriented database. So it is a database that subscribes to a model with information represented by objects. Object-oriented database are a unique offering in the relational database management system. And one thing we should know about object-oriented database is that they are not well known as mainstream database engine. But if we are to say a little thing about object-oriented database, just simply say that it is a database that subscribes to a model with information represented by objects. So we could see an example of an object-oriented model where we have object 1 as the maintenance report, and then we have object 2 as maintenance activity. So far so good. This very week we've been able to look at different forms of database. We have the relational database that uses rows and columns. So we have the flat file database, we have the hierarchical database, we have the object-oriented database, and then we have the network model database. So when next we meet, we continue from where we stop. I remain your computer teacher, KEHINDE Oladapo, Jakpara High School, Ijebu-Igbo. Thank you and God bless you.